Lindenhurst is a village of 27,000 on the south shore of Long Island, New York. These are the people who grew up there and their stories. Everyone I know is from Lindenhurst.
For what, like we did like a 10-day run.
Yeah.
Kind of going towards just like general Northeast shows, kind of like to like the middle of the US on the Northeast, right? Pretty much.
Yeah. We tiptoed into the Midwest and then came back around through Buffalo and then up through Vermont, Maine,
Yeah.
Rhode Island. It was cool.
Yeah, it was like a bunch of like I want to say like B or like C market cities where like a bunch of kids just kind of like rolled out because not
Yeah, definitely smaller markets, but like cool spots that we haven't played yet.
yeah.
And it was really, really cool.
Was that your longest run so far?
Probably by like only like a day or two,
Yeah, I
honestly.
think it matched like all the other longer runs that we've done. So
Yeah, we've done like chunks here and there that were like 8 or 9 days long, and then this was like a 10-day long run if you count Brooklyn at the last show.
I'll count it.
Yeah.
So, like, first of all, how was the response? And, like, were there any cities that, like, surprised you as far as, like, the amount of kids who knew who you were and knew the
yeah,
songs?
Buffalo.
Right, yeah, right off the bat we played Buffalo first. And to give an example, like we played the first new song that we released this year, Steps Ascending, and I like turned around when the chorus started happening and then like the whole room was singing along and it just surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
place we played. It
Yeah.
was definitely cool to see. And that place is like kind of popping off right now for that kind of for like our kind of music, like melodic hardcore stuff. We played with a bunch of really cool bands,
Yeah.
Auto Ignition, I think, Pilot Field, and then what was the opening band that was really dope?
Um
Robbery Club.
yeah.
Yeah, they were all sick.
Yeah, every
So
band
the
was
show
killer.
the show was just I guess stacked and like they got a good thing going up there right now for that kind of music. So
Yeah. It was like
it
a
was super
perfect day
cool.
to start everything. It was like a really, really cool show. I think we also played Troy too on that run, which is another like
Okay.
northern New York show, which was
Yeah.
also really cool. We just played direct support before that band Drug Church, and yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, the show's cool.
Yeah, Troy was a really cool town. There's a bunch of like really just like cool towns that we played like the entire like we played like a little run in February beforehand, and I kind of like count that because it wasn't too far away from the run that we did in March. And like we've just been playing a bunch of like cool towns, and it's just been awesome lately.
Had any weird weather or what was the longest drive you guys had?
Ooh.
Um,
Yeah, so we had a pretty rough drive one day. So it was this crazy situation.
oh
So,
yeah.
so long story short, our guitar player like last minute couldn't do the run. So our buddy Anthony Monaro, he filled in for us. He's the man. And but one of the days that we had a show, he already had a show in Philly with his other band Heads Will Roll. So we were like, all right, well, we're not gonna fuck up your show. So we drove him all the way to Philly because we were playing in Wilkes-Barre that day. So we are like, all right, we can make that work.
It was like a
We
2 hour difference.
facilitate it.
Yeah.
But it wound up being like instead of like a 6 hour drive to straight to Wilkes-Barre, it wound up being like 9 hours to Philly through like snow squalls
Yeah.
and then like 2 hours to Wilkes-Barre. And then him and like our buddy that came with us on the run had to go back and get
Yeah.
our buddy
I got
Tony.
everyone like to the house that we stayed at, and then we drove to Philly and back to go get him from Philly, where he played his show with his band. And we picked him up, drove him back, and we drove throughout the night, throughout like snow and rain and all that. And it was your typical touring moment
Yeah.
where we just made it happen.
Yeah, that's serious dedication on both your parts.
Yeah, it was awesome though. That
Yeah.
Wilkes-Barre show was great. It was sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
John just turned into a cartoon, so I don't know what's going on here.
Sorry. Am I better now?
That's louder, at least. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
I believed in you.
Well, wait.
Cool. So, anyway, let's take it back to the beginning. We'll go in alphabetical order. I guess we'll start with Bryan. Tell us about your family roots in Lindenhurst.
Sure. So I don't go back as far. I moved to Lindenhurst in eighth grade. So before that, I was like living in Queens, and then I lived in Levittown for a couple of years. And that was like my first taste of Long Island, and I honestly hated it when I first moved out there.
Good.
But then I moved to Lindenhurst, and I kind of found my people, honestly, and that was kind of like what set off like kind of all the stuff that I wanted to do when I was a kid. I wanted to like make a band and like, go to shows and shit like that. And I guess like I'd never really had an outlet or an opportunity for that in other places. So when I moved to Lindenhurst, I kind of like found that. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, I moved there in eighth grade. Um, and then that's pretty much, like my deepest roots in Lindenhurst is just moving there. Nobody I knew really lived there. I kind of just sort of met a bunch of awesome people and then
And still, that's like the most that's a pretty formative time in your life to move around that age.
yeah,
Still, so I
Yeah,
feel like
middle
it
school
counts.
age. Yeah.
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's like kind of I went to my first show when I was like 13, so it was like, kind of changed my life a little bit.
So you'd already
For the
discovered local music before that, before moving here.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I was like really into like I guess like you call it adjacent stuff that was within like, all bands that were inspired by hardcore bands, but I just didn't know about it at the time. And then I kind of like moved to Lindenhurst, went to like hardcore shows and punk shows and stuff, and then I kind of figured out like, oh shit, like this band is just ripping off this other dope band, and like that's just kind of figured out like where everything kind of came from and the roots of
Yeah.
everything. So Lindenhurst is pretty deep with stuff like that for sure, and like has its own set of roots for sure. So that was definitely cool for me to like, listen to awesome bands and then find out like, oh shit, all these bands like went to my high school. It's insane.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild. Like, if I've said a million times on the podcast, like if you're like inclined towards anything alternative in any way and you live here, like it's gonna find you.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like because
By
there's
proxy.
just been such a history of it. Cool. So when did you start playing guitar?
I kind of started playing like messing around when I was probably in like the beginning of middle school. And then I kind of like never played music with other people. And then when I moved to Lindenhurst, I kind of started jamming with people, and that was kind of what changed gears for me for sure. Because I knew a bunch of people in school, like middle school, high school, whatever, that were really talented at playing guitar or whatever instrument, but they just never jammed with people. And like, if you ever try to jam with them, it was like a nightmare.
So about you guys are younger than us, so about what year is this?
So I moved to Lindenhurst and I guess it was 2007 or it was
Okay.
2008. One of those. It's 2007 or 2008.
So like prime MySpace era.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty much all the bands that I like started getting into and whatnot. Like we're all just like rocking it on MySpace, and that was the thing at the time, MySpace music. And
Definitely around that era, I knew like of your bands through MySpace.
Yeah.
From like like my whole circle wherever I was at in Lindenhurst at that year.
And that's kind of a funny thing is like me and Matt are only like a year apart, like as far as grade wise.
Mhm.
We were never friends in high school, but we like,
It was like
became
shortly
friends.
shortly after we were both out of high school is where
Yeah.
I kind of like, you know, ended up being introduced to everybody for the most part, like on like a friend to friend level.
So I didn't even know like Matt from Lindenhurst really. I kind of knew him from going to shows, and he kind of just was at a lot of the shows that I was going to, and we just kind of became friends from there. So it's funny because we're both from there, but we didn't meet because of Lindenhurst.
Yeah.
So what was the scene like kind of in school at that point? Like were the cultures kind of combining more than they would have maybe like 10, 20 years earlier? Or do you still feel like you were kind of a bit of an outcast for being into that type of thing?
It's a lot of Moose Lodge shows.
Yeah, I mean it was interesting because we definitely had like a bunch of different like factions of like genres of music kind of people in school,
Mhm.
but we did kind of come together and play like the Lindenhurst Moose Lodge, like teen night, but we would just like all the different types of bands would like kind of take it over and we would just
Yeah.
play it
It
instead.
would just be random shows. I
Yeah, we
remember
would just
like
basically put it together ourselves, but we just did it at the teen
yeah.
nights.
Yeah,
Like,
Bryan would be playing all these shows at the Moose Lodge and I would just be like the kid that's like checking it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would roll up and be like, this is crazy.
Yeah,
That's-
I mean there was like a like sort of like cooperation in that respect, I guess, like just because like people wanted to play shows and make shows happen, and everybody was like on the same page with that. But there was definitely like a sort of divide with like, like scene kids versus like hardcore kids versus like ska kids kind of thing. And it was, it's all just like bullshit, stupid shit that would just happen because we were in high school. But there was definitely like a little bit of a like, I'm a hardcore kid, you're a ska kid, I'm cooler than you kind of bullshit going on. But
Just
It's
young.
similar to like way back when I started going to shows. Like if you showed up to a show in a Nirvana shirt, nah, like
Yeah.
you were legit going to get beat up, So, but now it's like, but, everyone loves Nirvana. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
undeniable,
The line's definitely blurred a lot, and like, but that's a cool thing, and I kind of respect that because like now I know a bunch of kids that like definitely didn't fuck with hardcore in high school and stuff like that, and they're kind of into hardcore, like, or I see them around once in a while and stuff like that. It's cool because everybody just like has their own taste and whatever style of music, but they're like all connected so deeply in weird ways. So once you realize that, like, you kind of just are into anything that you just like the sound of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially post high school.
And were you playing like in school band at all or anything or any other activities?
I played. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't have any formal background in music whatsoever. I kind of just jam with my friends, teach myself like how to play a part that I want to play. And like, I feel like mostly just from jamming with people is kind of like how I learned how to play guitar, because I feel like kind of pick something up from anybody that they do a little bit better, or like make something easier or whatever it is, a new chord or whatever. So I feel like that's kind of like my entire music background is just from jamming and like hanging out and whatever. But I guess Matt, did you play like tuba or something?
I play trombone. You
Oh,
guys
there you
always
go.
say I play tuba. They like
Nice.
really want me to like play tuba in their heads.
I think it just makes sense.
Yeah.
He's like a very
It's got that low end. Yeah.
guy, and yeah.
Yeah, I play trombone like throughout like my whole school career in the band.
Nice.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I know some very successful trombone players. Like if you get good at that,
Yeah, it's like a hard like niche thing. Like
Right.
tuba honestly is too. Like they're always in high
Sure.
demand because they're like a small, scarce part of a band, I
Right.
guess.
You could play in the Roots.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So Matt, tell us about your family roots in Lindenhurst.
Born and raised Lindenhurst. I was born in 1994. As far as my mom and dad go, my mom grew up in the Bronx with her 5 siblings and her mom and dad. And my grandpa was the super for like an apartment complex. So he like took care of like 4 different buildings. And they like lived on the basement floor of one of the buildings. So they were in the Bronx until 1975, where he ended up passing away. And because that happened in 1975, they had to relocate because they couldn't stay at the house anymore because he was, the caretaker. And I think they were looking at upstate and Lindenhurst because that's where the majority of my grandma's family lived. And then they ended up deciding on Lindenhurst, and they moved on to Delaware Avenue, right down the block from Tangs. So I think it was like midway through Delaware Avenue on the left-hand side, like in between Sunrise and Spiegelhagen, which is where my grandma lived. And then, yeah, I think my mom ended up working at paint store with my dad in his hometown of New Hyde Park. They met there, they got married, and then they bounced around like a few different parts of Lindenhurst in like different apartments. And then I ended up being born when they lived in the basement apartment of one of my family members right down the block from William Rawl. So I ended up, going to William Rawl, doing the whole I think is Lindy American, like the little league where you would play by like the town hall.
It is. I also went to Raw.
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah, so yeah, I played Little League, Lindy American.
Nice.
My dad was a baseball coach. I think he coached my little brother's team. I think they were the Yankees, and I played on the A's. Yeah. And then we ended up moving away from the apartment that we had near William Rawl, and then we moved into my grandma's house on Delaware Avenue down the block from Tang's Chinese food place. Lived there for the majority of like my elementary school years into middle school, and then like shortly through middle school I ended up moving like 2 houses down. So I lived on the corner of Delaware and Spiegelhagen up until I was like 27, 28.
Okay.
So I guess that's like the timeline of like my roots in Lindenhurst. So like my grandma and six of her kids moved to Lindenhurst in 1975, and then they did all of their school careers in Lindenhurst, all six of them. So I guarantee one of them knows somebody who knows somebody, as
Okay.
Lindenhurst usually is, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you say your last name and it's like, oh yeah, I went to school with your cousin so and so. It's
Yeah,
just
I actually mine and Brian's friend, Michael, we hang out at his house a lot. And then like, I think my uncle was like one of the general contractors on his house. And like, I always find out I'm like hanging out with my friends' families and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, your uncle's this. Oh, your aunt's this." And it's just like, yeah, everyone's like connected in a weird way in Lindenhurst. It's just, a condensed town.
so did you stay at Raw that whole time or
Yeah, I was at Raw the whole time because I was basically always north of Sunrise in Lindenhurst. So did Raw the whole time, and then yeah, middle school, high school,
Cool.
played a trombone in the concert band, played football. Um, Yeah. I think the preschool I went to was St. Boniface. I think that's how you pronounced it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like all North Lindy stuff. And then I ended up, meeting a bunch of my friends that I still have today through middle school and high school, and then ended up meeting up with these guys after we graduated.
Yeah, so how did you discover local music?
I had a friend group that I met through football, and then one thing led to another. That friend introduced me to a bunch of other people that played music, and I always played trombone for a while, but I was always like through like my dad and mom's musical influences, I always loved like heavier metal music and rock music, and I ended up finding like a good group of like 5 or 6 friends that all played music. And then we ended up just like forming cover bands into forming local bands playing like random, like heavier music. And then we just played at a bunch of like local clubs throughout like 8th grade until all throughout high school, which was like Revolution, like every month, Revolution Music Hall. And then, yeah, I was playing bass from like 6th grade until now, yeah, obviously. Yeah. And then, yeah, since I was playing in all those bands and like playing at all those local clubs, like I just always like by like all the bands playing like locally around me, like I kind of like figured out like what bands are what. And yeah, just from playing in bands, I met everyone and I kind of like figured out what like the local scene.
That's another interesting thing that happened like right around the time I graduated, like between then and when John graduated. I'm 99, he's 01.
Mhm.
But, like the football players started getting into punk and showing up at our shows.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was all good after that.
My graduating class wasn't as like into like hardcore than like I think I graduated 2013, Brian graduated 2012. I feel like besides like 1 or 2 friends that were always hanging out with you guys anyway, like I just kind of had like a small pocket of like 5 or 6 friends that like just jammed all the time and just randomly played shows. And like even throughout like my whole high school career, I think like either like you or Michael or someone in your group would always post like flyers from shows that were happening at like the Moose Lodge and stuff on like the weight room bulletin board right outside. And like I was always working out there for football, and I would always like walk outside, look to the right, and I would see like a stand your ground flyer or like a backtrack incendiary flyer, whatever it was. And I was always like, that looks cool. Like, but I didn't really actually like dive into it until like my, tail end of a high school for the most part. And then started going to shows immediately around like 11th, 12th grade. And then not until after I graduated, I really like started hanging out with Brian and everybody.
So obviously backtrack and what other bands were coming up around that time that became notable?
Lindenhurst band? Or
Not necessarily Lindenhurst bands, just any local bands or any bands that came through on tour, maybe.
oh yeah, I
What were
mean
you into? What were you into?
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
fucking Agent was like doing like a lot of crazy shit at the time. I think they were like one of the first room for cover bands. So that was a crazy time to be around and play shows with Agent and stuff. Capital, legendary band,
Yep.
fucking crazy, crazy to see like those types of shows because at that point I had only really been going to hardcore shows, so Capital was like a different level of it because they just like had that melodic sound too, but they still had the same energy as a hardcore show. So that kind of like changed the game for me a little bit. And then dude, there's so many good bands that are going. I mean, Iron
I
Sheik
I
kind of
found
popped
out
out.
about hardcore from our friend Dave Andahar. He was a drummer in the concert band, and I think it was after either would it have been the Crusades record release or the Cost of Living record release, which
Mm,
was when you guys were like seniors.
I feel like Cost of Living came out like 2012, 13.
So
So
that
probably when you were a senior.
so then maybe it was
Yeah,
the record before
yeah.
that. But I think you guys all went to it, and then like our friend Dave like came up to me at like a random like spring concert or like winter concert, and he was just like, "Yo, you playing bands?" And he's like, "We just went to this record release the other day for this band Incendiary. They're insane." And he showed me a video, and I'm like, "That is cool." So I don't know my gauge of like the bands that were doing a lot during that time during high school, but I was introduced to Incendiary in like 11th grade, you know.
Yeah. Well, they were fucking awesome. Yeah, Incendiary is like Backtrack. Um, Trapped Under Ice was like freaking huge at the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Turnstiles sort of kind of just started out,
Yeah.
and they were just like a dope, straight up hardcore band at the time. They're still very cool, but
That was one of the
yeah,
bands that got me interested in it again. Because for a long
yeah,
time, it got kind of stale to me. And then I heard them
Mhm.
and I'm
yeah,
like, oh, because I love groove. And
same.
I was like, oh, so these kids are grooving again. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
into
no,
it.
I totally get that. It was like a good, like refreshing band to like kind
Yeah.
of bring some like new people in and like bring people back into it and stuff like that. I definitely feel that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There were so many bands that like popped off. Like Title Fight's another one. They were like playing like backyard shows and small shows on Long Island, and then all of a sudden, they were doing crazy, crazy shit. I mean, it was cool to watch like the rise of a lot of those bands. Um, but yeah, lots of cool bands coming through on tour all the time. There was definitely like a really good like era for hardcore, but something just happened after the pandemic that like everything exploded. I
I
have
would
no
say it
idea
was
what,
like a hard reset.
yeah,
And
like it was
then
weird thing that like after the pandemic, everybody just all of a sudden started to
wanted to
find
consume
hardcore.
music.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess music in general, but
Yeah.
like hardcore specifically is like probably the biggest it's ever been. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's cool. Like I respect it. I like that young kids are still getting into it. It's not like just an ending
Yeah.
after like our generation or
Yeah. If we're
whatever you want to
talking about
call it.
like current day shows right now, like Long Island specifically, every local show is insane. Everyone. It's incredible right now.
Yeah. Younger kids coming in, but there's a spread now because like there's people my age and older still kind of lingering around. And it seems like everyone's getting along.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you mention it, there's like like young kids to like old
Yeah.
people, you know?
All different kind of people for
It's a
Yeah.
sure.
huge spread. Yeah. That's cool. Okay. So, and that's about around the time when Stand Still gets started, is like kind of as the pandemic's hitting.
Sort of, yeah. Like we were like me and the other guitar player and the drummer of Standstill were in a band called Discolor. And we hadn't really been doing that much because we were all like
Like
they were
college.
away at school a lot, so we like as a band couldn't really like go out and try to do shit as much. But we kind of wanted to put new music out and we were working on it for a little bit. And long story short, we just decided like the guitar player Steve of Standstill, he used to sing in that other band, and he decided he kind of wanted to just have a front man and not really be responsible for that. And this way, like we could like have a little bit more energy is kind of like what we were looking for anyway. So we just decided to like reset the whole thing and we started writing some stuff. And it was kind of funny because like right when the pandemic started, we had no idea like what was going on yet. Like everybody was still like, "Oh, is this even real? Like who knows? Like they're going to shut down for like a week or something like that." Like nobody actually knew what was going to happen yet. Um, and we like met up for like one of the first days, like everything shut down and whatever, and we're like, all right, like we have some time to jam now, like this thing's gonna blow over in like a week or two or whatever. We started writing some shit, and then obviously it totally didn't work out that way. We didn't see each other for a couple months, but we were just stuck at home and just bouncing riff ideas like back and forth to each other. And then kind of, I would say like the summer-ish, I guess it was like when you could start meeting up with some people again, but like you couldn't, shows weren't happening or anything that crazy. we just met up and kind of like worked on the songs that we already, were jamming, and then all the ideas that we were spitballing during COVID, during the pandemic and whatnot. And then we started to pull other people into it. So then we brought in Matt to play bass, and then we were looking for a singer. And Matt was good buddies with Jerry at that point. I guess they'd been like keeping in touch over the pandemic, like playing video games and whatnot. And yeah, he was like, "Oh, like my friend, like is a good singer. Like you should try him out." So we're all like, "Yeah, we're down to give it a try." And like he came by, he was into it, and he kind of just like tried doing something, and we were all like, "All right, this guy knows what we're trying to do. Like this is cool."
Yeah, it makes sense.
So we all like vibed with it, and then kind of started from there. Like the rest of the band, we had all these songs already that we wrote over the pandemic. Basically, we like just jammed it out before we brought anybody else into the fold, sort of, and then we just got Matt and Jerry involved. They like did their parts, and then we just recorded two EPs worth because we like had nothing else going on.
Yeah,
So,
we literally practiced like twice or three times a week, if
Yeah.
not more, like leading up until recording all 9 songs
Yeah.
at once.
Yeah, just because like we had like all of us were like furloughed or laid off or like whatever it was from
That
whatever was going
very
on.
not working for the
Yeah,
whole time.
obviously this guy works all the venues, so like he was like not
Yeah.
doing anything. So we were all like, had the time to do it and had the time to put into it. And like Jerry actually kind of always says that he would like if he ever made another band, he would want to do it the same exact way. Obviously not through a pandemic, but just meaning like put a bunch of time into it and just like make the songs really good. Because I feel like a lot of bands just like try to get shit out there, like, oh, like we just got to play a show first, or we got to like
Yeah.
record this demo first, and like it doesn't really fucking matter what you do as long as you like
Make
you know,
sure you're ready.
yeah,
before
you
just
put some
jumping
time
out.
into it,
Yeah.
and then like think about it, I guess, and then put it out, and or just play a show. And like I'm the kind of guy.
It makes recording so much easier too when you're well
Yeah,
rehearsed
for sure.
Yeah.
Just play a couple shows and then like be ready to record, because like that gave us a lot of time to just like refine what we were doing and like really be comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Which yeah, so it was a cool, like it was almost like an experiment, and then it kind of just turned into what it is now. So we kind of didn't really expect anything out of it. We talked to like Lumpy from Days, and he like liked it right away. And at first he was like, yeah, like we'll probably just do like CDs or something.
Yeah.
And then he sent it to Nick from New Morality Zine, and he was like, yo, do you want to go in on this with me? And Nick loved it too. So then they came back to us and they're like, yo, like this
I
is
think
just
didn't it start? It was like tapes and CDs at first, and
yeah,
then
it
it
was just
went from tapes and
it was just
CDs.
CDs, I think. And then basically they just like liked it so much that they were like, yo, this just deserves to be
Yeah.
on vinyl. Like we like want to just put it out because I think people really like it. So
Yeah,
So
that was awesome.
it was really, we didn't expect anything out of it. We just recorded these songs, and the fact that they like believed in it right off the bat like that, it was kind of cool to just jump into something like that. It's not like typical or what I would usually have done in an approach for a new band, but it was really cool, and it was just like a weird experiment because of like the way the world was working at that time. So we put the
Yeah.
shit out, and then we played our first show, and like that also blew all of our minds and our expectations out of the water.
Mhm.
And it kind of just like set us on the path that we're on now, I guess.
It just goes hand in hand with what I said about like every local show in Long Island after the pandemic being insane. Like it's just like
Yeah.
we're just like a footnote on like all the insane stuff that's been happening on
Yeah,
Long
for
Island.
sure.
Just rode that wave.
Yeah.
So where was your first show?
AMH.
AMH.
Mhm.
Yeah, our first show, we played the
Koyo record
Koyo.
release for their second EP.
for their
Yeah.
second EP,
Yeah.
2021. So it was at AMH. We like played like second or something. It was our first show, so it was awesome. Like we didn't expect anything out of
Yeah.
it, and like it was just a crazy set. The whole show was awesome. Koyo's set was crazy too. So just a really good time for Long Island, and it was cool to like come back, with not having shows for so long, and like just wanting to go to a show and like wanting to like experience that again.
Yeah.
And to just kind of like, start it off with a bunch of really cool shows like that. More people than I've ever seen at a show in like, 10 years are there. It's super cool. And then somehow that just like sustained, and even more people are going to shows now, I feel like, than when we first came back from COVID. So just a really cool time to live on Long Island if you like music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the Practice and Patience EP was your first, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so as far as like when you guys were just like getting going, the music that you were passing around, like and kind of like agreeing upon, because I hear like so much influence. There's a little like from each era I can hear. So what bands and like what eras, subgenres of the music per se, like were you guys agreeing on?
I mean, I'm sure you guys could probably guess, but
Yeah. I mean, that's probably easy.
I can make some
Yeah.
guesses, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you
Yeah.
though.
I mean, from being a kid, like I first kind of got into Capitol from like going to Capitol shows, like my friends bringing me to Capitol shows, and then discovering Silent Majority, and then that branching off to like Heads vs. Breakers and stuff like that. Like for some reason that like when I found those bands when I was like 15, that like they've just been bands that like never really got old for me. There's only a few bands like that, in my whole discography of music where I could be like, I would love that as much as I liked it when I was, 15. So I kind of always wanted to do a band in that vein, Crime and Stereo, The Agent, Capitol, Silent Majority, Heads vs. Breakers, like all those types of bands. And that's kind of like what it was for me. And I guess our other band was a little bit more like the influences for the other guys at that point were a little bit more like newer stuff, like Balance and Composure, like
and then like this more melodic title fight stuff.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like stuff like that. So I feel like Standstill, like everybody at that point, like sort of was like listening to that same kind of music, and we were kind of all on the same page about like the direction of it instead of like pulling the rope in opposite directions. Which honestly, when that happens, it's also really cool because then you get like a mix of like two totally different ideas, sort of. So that's also cool when the rope's being pulled in different directions. But we kind of just all were locked in on the same type of thing, and similar influences at least, even if it's not just like Long Island specific ones.
Yeah.
We were listening to like a lot of Thursday, Fairweather.
I mean, for the new EPs, I was listening to a lot of like Cave In and stuff like that.
Well, what for the LP you mean?
Yeah, the LP.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's not out yet, really, so people don't know what that sounds like. But
I mean, yeah.
Oh,
there's a couple songs, but there's a
Yeah.
couple songs out, but yeah, there's definitely been a pretty broad influence. Like obviously, Movie Life too is huge, and I feel like we kind of like. I don't think anybody was like, oh, like I'm writing this riff because it sounds exactly like Silent Majority, like, or this sounds like Movie Life. I feel like it was like one person had one thing that was pretty cool, and then we combined it with like another like guitar harmony or like whatever, like octave kind of part, and it just like turned into the sound that we are. And
Yeah, it's just almost like how the chemistry is.
yeah,
It's
so like
just-
the chemistry almost makes it more sound like our influences probably than it does like with our standalone parts that we write or like whatever we bring to the table like initially. So
like there's almost a percentage of it that's not intentional.
yeah,
Like,
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're not fully intentional with like ripping stuff off like totally, like we're not like, oh, like I'm just gonna steal this riff right now. Like we just kind of gravitate towards that kind of sound, just like the way that we write. And then like kind of when we put it all together with all of us in one room, it kind of just sounds how it sounds now. And that's
I mean,
a
people.
huge part of it is just all of us together, creating that sound, not just, one person bringing a riff or something like that.
and so were you guys kind of immediately hitting the road, playing out of state?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, as soon
pretty
as
much.
as soon as it was like possible to do that because
We played our first show in August, right?
August 21.
And then that
Yeah.
October, right? We
Yeah.
did the first Pain of Truth tour.
Right, yeah. It was like our first tour, Pain of Truth's first tour. And like I'm not sure if it was Age of Apocalypse's first tour ever, but like maybe their longest at the time. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But it was,
Yeah, we played our
three of
first show in
us.
August, and then 2 months later, we just started like doing like
Yeah.
like little chunks that
Yeah.
were like considered tours, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the first show might have been like the first show back from the pandemic might have been in like June of that year. And then our first show was in August. And then like tours started to somewhat happen again, like not in a huge way, but
That fall. Yeah.
that fall because people are like, okay, this is under control enough where the show's not going to get canceled, like,
Yeah.
overnight, which
Well,
still
like,
kind of almost
Koyo
happened, I
did
think,
did
with Fuse.
Koyo did their first tour, I think, in September with Soul Blind.
Yeah, that makes
And then
sense.
we played the Long Island date of that in September,
Right, yeah.
which was our second show. And then
Yeah.
after that,
Yeah.
that following month,
Yeah, so that fall, I feel like bands were starting to like be like, all right, we can probably tour without, most of our shows getting canceled and this not being worth it and this
Yeah.
just being like super spreader events kind of thing. So yeah, like kind of as soon as we were able to, like as it was like, you know, feasible,
Hmm.
we hit the road right away, and then we kind of just, have been doing as much as we can really to
To
just be out there
yeah,
like since then. Last year we were a little bit slower because we were just taking a lot of time to like record in the studio.
yeah.
And it was like kind of hard. We came to a point where we were like touring so much and we were also spending a lot of time in the studio, and we were like, all
It
right,
was
like one of these things is gonna suffer if we don't.
it was like burning the candle at both ends. It was like we
Yeah.
were just doing a lot of touring, coming into the studio and realizing that we like needed to like prep a lot more and like gather ourselves a lot. And then yeah,
Yeah.
it snowballed in us just focusing on
Yeah,
recording
because
for most of the year.
basically I think that when we came to that conclusion, we like pretty much got off the plane for a tour we did with Life's Question.
Slept for 3 hours, went into
Yeah.
the studio in
Yeah, straight
Connecticut.
up. Like we
Yeah.
literally landed from a week or so long tour with Life's Question from Vancouver to San Diego,
Yeah.
which was awesome, but like obviously exhausting. And then we fly home. Our flight gets delayed. Matt's bass got lost for like 4 hours at the airport, and then
Yeah.
we
Sitting in the rain,
yes,
slept for 3 hours, drove to Connecticut, started recording the record, and we are like, oh, this is hard. Maybe we should just like
maybe we should
focus on just
pick
doing
one
this.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of just slowed down
Yeah.
a little bit just to make sure the record wasn't going to come out like crap, because we were like,
Yeah.
this is worth putting our time into. So we kind of just focused on that for a bit, and we kind of expected the songs to be out a little sooner. So we figured, oh, we're just gonna be playing shows off of these new songs soon. So, but yeah, now we're kind of just cranking it up again because all our stuff is done. We wrapped up like masters in like I guess January or so.
Hmm.
So everything is like wrapped now, and we're kind of turning the gears back on for playing as many shows as we can, and putting these songs out, which we're super super excited about.
Yeah. Things are just in a more exciting place now as far as like the work that we have to do. It's all exciting stuff.
Yeah. And who produced the album?
Um, our friend who recorded the band that Bryan mentioned that he was in with the other guys, Discolor, and he recorded a band that me and Bryan were in together. It was a hardcore band that we had before this band called No Idea. And he also recorded a lot of like the Hangman stuff. He recorded this band Separated, and he was just like kind of like recording a bunch of our friends' bands from Long Island. And then since we've known him for so long, it was kind of like a no-brainer because we just like working with people that we have strong relationships with. For the most part, that's like big priority. So we
Yeah.
ended up recording with our friend Greg Thomas, who was like the main producer, and then our friend Chris Teddy helped out a lot with the engineering, and he helped out on the mix too. So it was Greg Thomas producing, and then Chris Teddy and Greg mixing it, and then we had um Chris Crummett at Interlace Audio, who did like a bunch of records that were like that fit like what we were trying to go for, who like works hand in hand with the producers. So
Yeah, we
Chris
just heard
Crummett
some of
was our
his
mastering engineer.
Yeah, we heard somebody that or excuse me, we heard some of his work, and Greg and Teddy both had been working with him on,
Yeah.
a decent amount of records, and we wanted the kind of the same thing. Like we decided to work with Greg and Teddy because they're awesome and we're friends with them, but
Yeah.
also just because like we already know them.
We've
We know how
probably
they
known them
work.
for like 10
Yeah,
years
we've
or
known
like
them for
less.
almost 10 years
Yeah.
probably at this point. So it's like we kind of knew what we were getting into with them, and we, you know, knew that we work well with them, and they put out dope records.
Yeah.
So
They also like we did a before we played our first show when we like had no like gauge on like when shows were gonna come back. Um, we did a live video that was filmed, and whoever recorded and produced the audio was Greg and Chris, and it was insane sounding. So we were like, maybe we should just go to them for
yeah,
more
for sure.
songs, you
Yeah,
know?
we did a tour with Stick to
That
Your
was
Guns.
that was the It video.
No,
Um,
actually, it was so it was just a live session at Silver Bullet, and if you actually watch the video, like, so we put those live tracks out on the In a Moment's Notice EP,
yeah, on the
like
B
as
side.
the B side.
Yeah.
But if you watch the video from like the original live session, we actually did a cover of "Scary" by the Movie Life.
Yeah.
That was super cool. Like, and I was like stoked on it at the time because it just sounded so sick. To hear it recorded, in a live setting. So that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just awesome up there. So like we decided to work with them, and we're psyched on how the record turned out. Like we can't wait to share the rest with everybody. And yeah, definitely made a good decision overall.
Yeah. We're excited.
Yeah. And back to videos though, you also made like a professional video for Loose Ends.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was our friend Tom Flynn that helped us out because he's like a very like well sought out like videographer, and I've known him for a little bit through like where I work, and just kind of like hit him up, and he was more than willing to like just work with us on the music video for Loose Ends. And yeah, we ended up just like throwing something together and like last minute running, like we like changed the location of the video like day of, and then ended up being really sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. And
Where you
yeah,
shoot?
it was Lido Beach Park in Long
Lido
Beach.
Beach Park in Long Beach.
Yeah.
There's like another Lido Beach that people know.
It was like a
Nassau
park.
Beach.
It was like a random like
Yeah. It's in Long Beach.
Yeah.
Like it's off of the main road that everybody drives down when
Yeah.
they go there. But yeah, it was a cool spot. It was definitely cool to work with Tom. Like he's like super, super professional. So he made it look awesome. We were just like all like flapping around in a field for like 3 hours, and he just made
Yeah.
a video out of it, made it look cool. So respect.
Yeah, it's got that like black hole sun look, that very like contrasty.
That's a sick comparison. Honestly, I never
Yeah.
thought about that. That's cool.
Yeah, he's straight up like we just give him like a small idea of like our creative vision, and then he just like rolls with it and just makes it come to life without like very like we don't have to intervene at all. We don't have to tell him what to do. We probably have like small little notes and that's it, and he just does it, and it's insane.
Yeah. We actually just wrapped up a video on Tuesday that we like worked
Yeah.
on for the new record.
Yeah, he's doing
So he did that as well. So that's going to be really cool. It's going to be
Yeah.
it was a little bit more planned out than the Loose Ends one. So it'll probably turn out
yeah.
a bit cooler.
Me and our guitarist Steve were like going back and forth on like some ideas, and like I said, like we just created a small creative vision and told it to Tom, and then Tom was like, definitely do it here and here, and this is how we're gonna do it. So yeah, we're gonna have some videos out with Tom Flynn for this LP, and it'll be fun. Yeah.
So what I know it happens a lot more nowadays, but like just your opinion on, should hardcore bands have videos?
I would say it's not necessary.
Yeah, I agree with that. But like, my opinion is do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, there's
Who
no
cares?
Right.
Like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
I hate when people are like, oh, you can't do this because of this. It's like, just do what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't want to hear like that people aren't doing shit just because they're afraid of what other people are going to think about it. It's kind of stupid. I'd rather just see exactly what your vision is for something and like
We
just vibe with that.
we just kind of like worked hard to have
Yeah.
the means to do the videos, and I think it's like on my end, it's a fun thing to like get those things to like come together. As far as like putting together a music video. So we just did it. It was just fun, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I get why people would say it's not necessary, like what Matt said, but at the end of the day, just do your thing. Whatever you want to do is
yeah.
who cares what anybody says.
So okay. So once the album comes out, do you have a date for that yet, or still pending?
I don't know if we have like an actual date to like announce yet, but it's definitely coming soon, 2024.
This year.
Definitely this year.
Yeah.
Sooner than later.
Planning to hit the road?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some stuff lined up that's gonna be pretty cool. I don't know when we're gonna be announcing anything, but definitely some cool things to look out for sure. And we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna be playing some new places that we've never played before, and
Yeah.
some really exciting stuff. So we're all psyched at least.
Yeah. It's like things just seem to be like falling into place, and it's just it's cool. It's a lot of fun things happening right now as far as like what we got to look forward to.
Yeah.
And have you toured overseas yet? I know you mentioned Canada, but
Canada, we got there.
Did one Vancouver show.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
one in like international show, I guess.
Right, yeah. That was our first time out of the country and our only time out of the country so far.
Mhm.
We want to get to Europe, but we just like haven't. We're just like waiting for the right moment because we don't want to just do it just to say like, oh, we did Europe. Like that's
Yeah.
awesome, but like we want to just go with the right band and the right everything. So like we're just
Well, for generally how this band works, we never really just like tour just a tour. We just make sure it's like the right moment. you
yeah,
know?
exactly. For depending on what we got going on in our lives, plus
Right.
you know whatever else. We just kind of wait for the right moment for stuff as much as possible because it just makes sense that way. It's
Yeah.
more authentic. you know, like if to go with, oh, like we're friends with this band already, like this makes sense. It's gonna be a good time. Like we're gonna have a good time. So like we kind of just pick stuff like that for the most part.
That one
And mix
Canada
that with our availability.
word. That one Canada show is like the beginning of our West Coast tour that we were talking about, how we like came home and went right into the studio.
Yeah.
It was like we started in Canada on the like the West Coast of Canada and then just went all the way down to San Diego from there. Yeah.
Did you do the 101, like the slow route,
What is that?
like the Pacific Coast Highway, where you're like on the water going
Yeah,
through the
No,
wait,
actually,
you didn't?
no, we didn't. I think
There was some really awesome drives.
yeah, I mean, there was some good drives, but we also were like, so we went during the weirdest time
Oh,
because
the weather was insane.
in general, like last year, supposedly the West Coast got like a ton of like rain in general, just like wet weather that they usually don't have. And we landed in Portland, Oregon the day of their biggest snowstorm since 1940, which was like something ridiculous. Like you're gonna laugh. It was like 9 inches or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh yeah, we don't know if you can get your van out of the parking lot." And I'm like, "Yo, I'll jump in the parking lot and drive that shit out. Like it's not a big deal. It's
Yeah.
9 inches of snow." But it was they just weren't prepared for it. They don't have plows. They don't have salt. They don't have like the materials to deal with that kind of
Right,
stuff. And
They get an inch. It's like an emergency over there.
yeah, exactly.
It was like I was like seeing the news like while they were flying over because I went a week before like for vacation. I stayed in Vancouver, and I'm just like sitting there in a hotel like really comfy while they're like, "What the hell are we gonna do?"
Yeah, we don't even know if we have a van right
Yeah.
now, but yeah. So it was just a crazy trip, but yeah, the weather was actually very abnormal just in general, and it was crazy snowing, like it was crazy snowy in the mountains, and when we had like the drive, what was that from Portland, Oregon?
It was the
Basically played,
northern California drive,
yeah,
which was crazy.
because we played like Vancouver, then we played Seattle, and then we played Portland, Oregon. And like
Mhm.
those are all relatively close together to each other to the point where it's like really not a bad drive at all.
Yeah.
And then we had a crazy drive from like
Portland
Portland
to the
to
first,
San Jose.
yeah.
And that day, like it was snowing in the mountains.
It was a blizzard in the northern California
You know,
mountains.
in the mountains, like
yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever been like Vermont or like certain areas where they just like make you put chains on the tires, like if it's snowing uphill and stuff, just for traction. But yeah, like we got stopped and it was also crazy because like there was no snow sticking to the actual highway itself. So it was like barely wet on the highway. There's like a little bit of snow on the side of the highway, and they're like, yeah, you can't pass this point unless you go buy chains for your tires. So we had like on that crazy drive, we had to stop. We had to go buy chains for the tires. It took like an hour to buy them and to put them on and whatever. And then we drive away out of the parking lot getting the chains. And we just hear the craziest noise because of the chains on the tires. It was like like some crazy shit. And it just sounded like an airplane in the back of the van. And we were all like, all right, this doesn't sound like it's that good for the van. Like maybe we should just take this off.
Yeah.
So we get 5 minutes away from the parking lot where we, you know, of the auto body shop or whatever the place was that we bought the chains from. And then we immediately take them off, and then we wound up not even needing them because we get to the next checkpoint and they're like, hey, do you got chains in your van? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, all right, you're good. They didn't even check. They didn't care if we had them on.
I was so
it was just a crazy long
We
drive.
spent like 2 hours, and then it was like maybe $200 for the tire chains.
Yeah, and then we
like,
didn't even use them. And then they got rusted right away.
Yeah, we weren't able to return them.
So it was just a waste.
And we made it to that show. Literally, the band, like people were walking outside after the band before us finished playing, right when we parked after driving for like, what was it, like probably 10 hours.
Yeah.
And we got there, and then like we were like, all right, we got to play. And then, yeah.
Just
and
loaded
then
right onto stage. Yeah.
The show was awesome.
It was a fun show. We were all just like shot, and it was a crazy day.
It was like a stage in a gymnasium, and
But-
there was like a couple hundred kids that were just like going nuts.
Long story short about the tour, to answer the original question that we got off on this crazy tangent, was that I don't think we drove down the coastal highway, and like the weather just sucked anyway, even all the way.
Yeah.
Like we got to LA, it was literally snowing like the biggest snowflakes I've ever seen in my life. They were like
It was
the size of Matt's like entire mouth, like the snowflakes. It was crazy sized. And it was just, it was just like snowing in the sun. Like it was sunny out and snowing in LA. And we were like, I packed a bathing suit. I was like not prepared for snow in LA.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we didn't really get to see like I don't think we like drove up down the coastal highway. We might have taken it like in San Diego, like on the way to the airport the next morning after we played Shea
Yeah.
Cafe. But it was not the trip we expected weather-wise, but we had a dope time. Life question is awesome.
Set
Gag is
aside from
awesome.
that, the weather, like the Northern California drive was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. It was scenic for sure.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, the weather was a little off for the West Coast for sure. But we had a great time with the
Yeah,
other
the
bands
show.
and the shows were all
Yeah,
awesome. So we had a great time.
every show was crazy on that tour, and every band we were touring with was great.
Yeah. Gag, Life's Question, they're
Hmm.
both awesome, awesome people.
Great. So winding down, we're going to bring it back to Lindenhurst a bit. I know John's been waiting patiently.
Before
So-
that, I wanted to ask if they had any jobs in or around Lindenhurst at any point in your life.
Oh yeah, we both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I worked at Wellwood Bagels and I worked at Lindenhurst Bagel in Delhi, like the one that's like in town.
By the
Very
lemon tree,
integral
right?
job
And
for the
also,
Lenders community.
when I was 13, I think I worked at Cheslak's, the bakery in town, like one of the bakeries
Gotcha.
in town. Trying to think of any other.
They started letting boys work there.
Wow.
I remember they had an old.
Was
they
there
had an
no
old girl
oil
policy.
allowed thing?
Maybe I'm thinking of Patsy's, but I know they had like an all girls.
Pats, I tried to get a job at Patsy's once, and they said you couldn't be a boy and work there.
Oh, you know what it was? No, you know what it was? Is they did like at least Cheslak's, like I didn't remember any like specific policy or anything like that, but they definitely only had girl counter people. And like
Right.
I was employed as like a dishwasher, like I would fill like the pastries with like whatever the hell goes in there, jelly and like cream or whatever the hell. Like I would it was like a machine. You literally like put it on the machine and it would just like inject it into it and then you just put it on the tray. Like, yeah. So I worked there for like a couple months or something once when I was 13. It was like my first job. So
I worked at Stella's right by the 7-Eleven that used to be the Friendlies, right across the street from the middle school. I delivered pizza there for a few years, and I also, not that it's Lindenhurst, but I also worked at Piazzetta too, which is I think the owners are brothers. Like the other brother owns Gino's, which is that newer pizza spot in northern Lindenhurst.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just delivering pizzas for pizza spots in Lindenhurst for quite a minute.
Well, that would bring us to the first question. What's your favorite pizza in town?
It's not. I know it's not. I know people don't necessarily think it's the best pizza spot, but it's just like I'm just gonna say the pizza spot that is just like more nostalgic and makes me feel like home where I grew up, which was Imperial, because my mom was a waitress
North
at Imperial
Lindenhurst.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Yes. We grew up in North Lindenhurst, and my mom was actually a waitress at Imperial for like a couple of years from when I was like 5, and then whenever. Yeah. She worked there for like a good 3 to 5 years. So yeah, Imperial Pizza is like a spot that I hold like close to my heart. So
yeah, I feel like so weirdly, Lindenhurst has a lot of good pizza places and then like the surrounding towns, and they're all kind of like different in a way.
Mhm.
So like I love the diversity, so it's hard to like pick one. But for some reason, like a lot of people don't agree with me on this one, but I really like Spazzo's. I think their pizza is great.
yeah,
And
I've heard
I like
people.
their like
I
pepperoni
think they're
bites.
this on the sneak. They're the best one in town, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's what I think at least. And then if we're gonna go with like the adjacent area of Lindenhurst and whatnot, like I would say that I really like what makes me think of being a kid in Lindenhurst.
Kind of like
you
what
know,
I said.
Yeah, like in a way, is getting like an Albert's pie,
Oh,
like an
yeah.
upside down pie from
Yeah, yeah,
Albert's.
Yeah.
That's Copaig, but it's close enough.
Yeah,
We're
we would
gonna
just like all of our friends just order from them anyway, and
Yeah.
just bring it to our houses in Lindenhurst where we're hanging out at.
Yeah.
And just always eating
That was
out.
actually a staple, like the two staples of the Standstill first EPs, like when we were jamming and recording everything, were Albert's upside down vodka pies
Mhm.
with extra vodka sauce on the side.
That's my thing.
Mostly Matt's thing. Matt would just like drink a quart of vodka sauce.
That was like a joke. They're like, why do you have that?
And the other thing was why can't I think of the name?
I mean, let's just segue here off of pizza. My favorite, and I think our favorite food spot in Lindenhurst is Vicky's
Yeah, that's what I was
House
gonna
of
say.
Flavor.
Yeah, so Vicky's
being a
Casa del
northern
Sabor.
Lindenhurst guy,
Yeah.
the Licky's is always and will be the
Yeah.
best spot for me
We
to
would
get
get
food.
Vicky's and Albert's like every single time we jammed or were recording. It was like one or the other basically.
Yeah.
So yeah. But
I'm
yeah,
so
sorry to also take another huge tangent. He's like trying to play a game or something. We're like,
That's cool.
yes, just one question. Did you ever work in Lindenhurst? And we like somehow were talking about the best pizza.
I wanted to mention Vicky's. I
Talking about
love.
vodka sauce
Oh,
all
I
of a
love
sudden.
Vicky
Like,
too.
Yeah.
We actually like in our thank yous on the first record on A Practice and Patience, like if you have the record, you could like read the thank yous, and one of the thank yous on there is Vicky's Casa del Sabor because we literally
Oh
ate
yeah.
there almost every freaking day. That
Yeah. Well, actually, one which one of you guys are in broadcaster or was in broadcaster? You practiced at Tone Corello's like practice space, or he ended up practicing there on Dale Street?
yeah, we were at Dale Street for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, so we got Vicky's all the time because it was right over by our
It's up
practice.
the block.
That
Yeah.
what was that?
It's up the block.
Yeah, literally up the block. So
Yeah.
we when we were like starting to write this LP, we were practicing at that room that broadcaster practiced in. And we were always getting Vicky's.
Well, we were
and just-
actually at Nancy Street at first, and then we moved to Dale Street
Yeah,
to Tone
true.
Space. But yeah, I mean, it was the exact same area. It was like 2 blocks. I think, what is it, Dale and Nancy, and
Yeah.
they're all alphabetical, right? So
I just
Yeah.
saw like a
we were
picture.
like a couple blocks away from each other. But then
Yeah.
we moved into that Dale space.
And now we're all in Massapequa.
Yeah,
Everyone.
it's insane how many
Yeah.
bands have been in that spot.
We're in like Awful 109. Our practice spot is in like that weird spot where it's like Farmingdale, Amityville, West Babylon, and Lindenhurst, like where they touch,
Yeah.
you know?
Like right off the highway.
Yeah.
4/4 of Long Island.
Yeah, literally. Anyway, sorry for the tangent.
Anyway. What else do we got?
Are you guys straight edge? Yay, nay?
I'm straight edge.
I'm
Okay.
not edge.
Where's the first place you got alcohol in Lindenhurst?
Ooh, what the heck was that place called? I don't think I ever wound up getting my alcohol in Lindenhurst
Okay.
because I feel like that was too sketchy because like people could like recognize you and then it could
You
just
don't do
turn
it in your own
into-
town. Trick question.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but yeah, it was a trick question. But no, I feel like the first time I got alcohol in Lindenhurst was probably at Island Farms, which doesn't exist
Okay.
anymore, I think. That was like a huge hotspot at the time, and they supposedly would just sell liquor to like a 7-year-old. So, or not liquor, I guess. Well, it was a convenience store, so it was
And I-
mostly like beer, and
Yeah.
Island Farms, where was that again?
that was like on Montauk.
Delaware and Montauk.
Oh.
I think, yeah, Delaware and Montauk. And I
Where
think-
7-Eleven is
yeah,
now.
now it's like a
Yeah.
7-Eleven, I think. It's
Yeah,
like a weird 7-Eleven.
Yeah, that's where everyone was getting like their like Dutch Masters and stuff.
Yeah,
at
Dutch
Island Farms
Masters
and all.
and what do you call it? What was the crazy drink that everybody like?
Four Loko.
Oh yeah, Four Loko.
Yeah.
Like we were in like 11th, like I was in like 11th grade. Matt was probably in like 10th grade when like Four Loko like became super popular and like everybody was like dying from it at first before they like changed the formula.
Yeah, like drinking it.
So
at,
that was like-
what was that like? What was the woods behind the middle school? I feel like
I don't even know. I don't know what it's
we're
called
like
at least.
I don't know.
I
Lincoln,
know you're talking
Lincoln
about.
Woods.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like behind like the whole like trapeze.
Yeah,
whatever
everyone
you
was
call
just
it.
like drinking Four Locos back there, like
Yeah.
after school.
That's after school. Damn.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing that. But I was doing other stupid shit, but
So what did they take the caffeine out of it now?
I don't know what they did. They did something to it, but I don't know if this was like a crazy, stupid like Facebook article, but like at the time I read some crazy shit that they turned all the original Four Loko into ethanol, which honestly I believe. Like even though that could be a clickbait, like that totally could have been like a clickbait thing back then, because I think I read it.
Why
in, like,
wouldn't they though?
12 or
Yeah.
something like that. It could have been a crazy clickbait thing, but I honestly could also believe it's like 50-50 if it was real or not,
Yeah.
because that shit was absolutely insane.
Does the same things to your insides, yeah. Sure, sure.
Exactly, right?
hmm
What's the best bagel store? You might be partial to this, but
Oh,
I grew up with bagels and Bialys. I'll just say that.
okay. So like, I'm not gonna like spill the beans completely, but it all has to do with who makes the bagels.
Here we go.
And the single person, like the person that makes the bagels, has changed like several times between like any of the bagel spots in Lindenhurst. So
gotcha.
like they flip flop and stuff like that. So, and then sometimes people think they know, and then they're like, oh, I can do this myself, and they could just do, without the bagel guy, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? So if you've noticed like the bagels getting smaller or sweeter or something like that at a spot, they probably had to switch their bagel guy for some reason.
I feel like I'm
Yeah,
So
but-
that's like a very weird question because like it's almost like an era question. Like in 2010, what was the best bagel spot or like versus
Right.
now. But
Ranked the best
I mean,
bagel, yeah.
the classic one is going to obviously just be Wellwood Bagels because that was just always the go-to spot. But they definitely aren't the same bagels now that they were when I went to high school and like when it was like the spot to hit after like you wake up at 12 p.m. the next day after a party, like a Lindenhurst High School
Yeah.
party.
I would just walk down Spiegelagen and either go to Imperial or Bagels and Bialys.
Yeah, well, it's easy. Yeah, you were so close. I was kind of close there too because I always lived like I moved in Lindenhurst a couple times, like as I lived there, but I always lived in like the area of like Albany Avenue, um, elementary school. So I was always like I was on 39th Street, then I was on 4th Street, and I was on 36th Street for a little bit too. So like I was always in that area, so it was pretty close to me too, and you could just walk there. So it's
So
definitely
the
a good
west side
spot.
of Wellwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then randomly out of nowhere, the 35th Street Deli actually got decent. Like I don't know if they make their own bagels or what the deal is, but I know that they have pretty good food now from what a lot of people tell me. I haven't had it enough to like really say and give my stamp of approval or whatever, but I've heard a lot of good things, so I'll take it. What's you're just gonna say Wellwood Bagels probably?
I'm gonna say Bagels and Bialys because that's
Yeah,
what I
well
grew up with.
that's what the same thing.
That's Wellwood Bagels.
Yeah, Wellwood Bagels and Bialys.
I thought the one that you worked at was Wellwood Bagels.
No, that's just Lindenhurst Bagels.
I always know it as Bagels and Bialys.
It doesn't matter though. It's Wellwood Bagels and Bialys is like the whole name, but yeah, it's either Bagels and Bialys or some people call it Wellwood Bagels, but whatever. Same shit.
Did you guys have a favorite teacher growing up?
Favorite
Ooh,
teacher.
that's hard. Yeah, I have a good like couple of them, and it was kind of cool because like a lot of our teachers kind of knew about the whole like music thing because they were Lindenhurst alumni themselves.
Yeah.
So like they had like dated people that were in bands that like we knew of or like just went to shows all the time and like we're like, wait, how do you even know that band? That's crazy that you kids are like listening to this now. Like there was a couple teachers like that like connected with us on that level. But just in general, I feel like Miss Partridge was probably my favorite teacher. She was dope English teacher. I had a bunch of my friends had her, and she like some of like my friends called her mom. I'm pretty sure because she was just like so nice,
Mhm.
and she like would definitely get people into. I was like always into like English and social studies and stuff like that, so like it didn't really have to capture my attention, but she definitely captured like a lot of people's attention that like didn't want to be there. So that was also pretty cool. So shout out to Miss Partridge.
Yeah. I would say my answer would be like there's one teacher that I still stay in touch with till today because of like bands and like shows and stuff, and that's Mr. Lynham.
Oh yeah.
And I think he plays in a band with Mr. Ferrara now, or I think Mr. Ferrara plays in Playing Dead now.
Yeah, Mr. Ferrara plays in Playing Dead, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I had Mr. Ferrara and
I
then,
had
like, a
Mr.
bunch of
Lynham.
other people had Mr. Lynham.
Yeah.
I actually met Mr. Lynham one time because at lunch I threw my friend's like book from Mr. Lynham's class, I guess, which I didn't even know Mr. Lynham, but
Yeah.
I threw his book in the garbage and he was like so pissed because he's like, "Oh, Mr. Lynham's gonna fucking be so pissed at me. Like,
Yeah.
you have to tell him that you did it because then he won't be mad at me and you're not in his class, so he won't really care."
Yeah.
So I like, went up to him and I was like, "Yeah, I threw Jake's book in the garbage." And he was like, why the fuck did you do that? Like he was like, what's wrong with you, kid? Like I don't even know you. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
But yeah, he was pretty cool and he always like talked about music with like my friends that had him, and I had Mr. Ferrara in 12th grade for English.
Yep.
And it was cool. Like our old band, like Discolor that me, Steve, and Andre were in, played a show with one of his bands. And like I didn't realize it at first, but then I figured it out. And then we just were playing a show together. I was like, this is crazy. I'm just playing a show with my teacher from high school.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
awesome. And he's
Another thing that
awesome.
would have never happened back in the day. Like,
Yeah, I mean, he probably was like, "Oh God, like this is so like bad,"
Yeah.
or,
Mr. Lynham is super awesome whenever I see him around.
Yeah, I mean, now I feel like it's different now because we're like I'm like 30, you're like almost 30, like we're both almost 30, so I feel like if a teacher sees you now, it's like, all right, well, you're just
Yeah.
like an old guy too now.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I work at like a few local venues, and like whenever I've like on like 2 or 3 occasions have seen like old music teachers and Mr. Lynham like just like show up to these shows and they're either playing in cover bands or like bands of their own, and it's just like the most insane experience just to be like, wow, what's up, man?
Yeah.
And then they're like super cool about everything. Yeah, all my music teachers I loved. I love Mr. Mack. Mr. Pike was awesome in the high school.
Yeah,
I love Mr. Savastano, who's an English teacher who like directed the plays and stuff like that, because I played in like the pit orchestra. I played trombone for like the plays that would happen there, so there would be that overlap of like the music director and my English teacher who directed the play. That was always really cool. Yeah, I would say I wouldn't say I really have a favorite teacher, but it's just cool to see the cool teachers around still doing music, or
Yeah.
something along the lines of just running into them and being like, wow, that's so cool to see.
And it's awesome that they like still do that.
Yeah, there's
in their
some
lives. That's
teachers like Mr. Lynham that like are like just like still follow me on social media and it's just like, yo, this is really cool that you're doing this, or whatever. It's just cool.
Yeah. There's definitely a bunch of really cool teachers in Lindenhurst. I'm probably missing some that deserve to be shouted out, but
yeah.
But yeah, it was just cool in general that a lot of them like were sort of like from the area and like kind of knew what was up, and they kind of knew a lot of like the history and music in Lindenhurst, and like it's kind of crazy like how many bands or just like musical artists in general have like come out of the same place.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Like you almost think there must be something going on there, but
all those teachers were like, whenever I would see them around, specifically Mr. Lynham, he was just embracing the fact of like, this person, me, like, it's cool that you're doing this and you're from Lindenhurst, and there's a couple other friends of mine from Lindenhurst that are just still doing bands and stuff, and he like will see us around from playing his own shows, and it'll just be like, this is so awesome that you guys are still doing this.
Yeah.
And it's just like little moments like that 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 I hold and remember.
Yeah, that's definitely cool.
That would bring us to the next question: is favorite band at Lindenhurst?
Come on.
That's not fair.
Can we end the podcast? No, I'm just kidding.
Guys, we gotta go now.
Can we make a list? We have to do the favorites.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's like an impossible question, but I'm just gonna have to go with a goat.
Silent
I'm just
majority.
gonna say silent majority.
Majority, yeah.
Yeah, you just
with honorable mentions of neglect.
Every band that
Agent.
So many crazy bands. So
Capital,
that's too hard of a question for real. But just with respect, going to the goats. So we'll just say silent majority to be easy.
And that was just a cool experience that when they had their reunion shows that we were able to like see, it was just like such a pivotal
I mean,
in all of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I had
which lasts till today for what we're doing.
Back in the day at Chris Smith's college graduation party, I talked to Rich from Silent Majority, and like Michael like introduced me and was like, "Oh yeah, he was in Silent Majority. You love them." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." And like was talking to him. I was like, "Yeah, so like, are you guys like ever gonna play again?" And he told me like this whole sad story about the last reunion they did. And he was like, "Yeah, we're never gonna play ever again." And I was like, all right, that's fine. And then when they played in 2016, it like blew my mind. So
was they were
even gonna play a show?
Were we playing in bands? Together?
I don't know if we were yet, but
that might have been like on
we
the
definitely
cusp.
just started hanging out around that time.
I just remember that those reunion shows, like basically was like the first moment where I don't know. I was also working the shows. I stage managed the reunion shows, and it was just like a pivotal thing of me finally, like for the first time, feeling like just this insane, overwhelming joy of being a part of like a moment. And that's the reason why, it's a small reason why I like have the career I do today and playing the bands that I do today. It's just that like that show, like what the feeling of that show gave me for the first time that kept recurring, like, those Silent Majority shows are great.
There are very few bands where like they played and like just the room changes, like you can just feel something tangible.
Yeah, everyone in the room is just all like on that same feeling.
It's like a rare occurrence. Like, I've seen it with a few other bands, but it's always with them. It's just something about it.
Yeah. So much respect from so many people,
All right. Anything else, John? Or
that's about it. I don't know. It's what else do we have? Is there a deli beyond a bagel store? Is that something we started doing last time? Or Chinese food. That's the
Deli.
one we missed.
I mean, that's when I could have mentioned
Oh,
Vicky's.
what's the deli that's in
Right.
town that Italian deli? That place is pretty dope, honestly.
in
Foods of
town?
Italia.
Joe's.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Foods of Italia
Is it
North,
Joe's?
North Lindy.
Yeah, is it
Joe's
Joe's?
Gourmet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Joe's
Yeah,
Gourmet,
that
yeah.
place is just like like I don't know, like I feel like it kind of just goes under the radar a little bit. But a couple times I've had it, I'm like, why don't we go here? Like, yeah, I don't know. That's like just a dope spot.
You mentioned Foods of Italia. That place is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that whole strip is just
that's a good
it's good
question.
food.
though.
It's just
Solid
so
strip. Yeah, very underrated strip.
Yeah. What's the center? I don't even know what's the shopping center called.
Oh.
It's I think I don't know.
Damn. I guess
Sunrise
that's a good
something.
question. Then we'll
It
figure
does
it
have a
out.
name. Yeah.
Sunrise Commons, is that it?
That sounds about right.
I
Yeah.
don't even know.
It's like right across the street from the Dairy Barn. It's where like
Oh,
the
okay,
It's where the Outback is
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
The dollar store and the Rainbow Shop.
The other dollar store.
What was the dollar store before? Sorry, I'm asking questions now about lore. Wasn't it?
Family Dollar?
No. Family.
It was a Family Dollar.
You remember
Yeah,
when
it
the
was,
Rite Aid
yeah.
was a rock bottom?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ryan worked at the Family Dollar for a little bit.
He worked.
in,
I
like,
think
high
it's
school or
isn't it
something.
Dollar Tree? I think he worked at the Dollar Tree when it became a
So
dollar.
there's a Dollar General now there that was a Family Dollar, I believe.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a Dollar Tree there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, well, none of them are dollar
Family-
stores anymore anyway. So
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
Family Dollar is right next to the Fitness 19
that whole idea is
in
out
that
the window.
shopping center.
I don't understand how a company like their whole gimmick is like Five Below or like a dollar
Yeah.
store,
Mhm.
and then they just can't keep it on. Like I get it, inflation's crazy, man, but like your whole spiel is like the dollar store. So how you sell
Yeah,
stuff?
you
from
sell us
$1
garbage for $1 and we buy it.
Yeah.
It's like how
It's
do you
still garbage.
I remember when the dollar store, when the Sunrise Mall was closing, the dollar store was blowing everything out for like 85 cents or less. And I got like a lawn bag full of like shit for the house, which I'm still working through for like $30.
That's crazy.
Just killed it.
That's awesome.
But anyway, so I guess that's going to bring us to our last question. You can answer together or individually. If you could describe Lindenhurst to someone who's never been there, what would you tell them?
I would probably say if you know, you know, like all of, you know, the good, the bad. I feel like that's the best way to say it. Nobody can understand it unless you've like lived here at least for a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I live in Huntington Village now. And I don't know if it's just like from my personal experience, but I think maybe just the South Shore as a whole or Lindenhurst, is that we're like more of a like tight-knit friend group where we're always hanging out and always doing something, even like well into us becoming 30. Like everyone's playing baseball at the high school field or like, you know, I don't, it's probably just our friend group, but I just feel like the South Shore in general is always just hanging out and just trying to have fun whenever they can.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I would just say that's a positive thing about Lindenhurst. I don't know
Yeah.
if I can describe Lindenhurst to
Yeah.
somebody that hasn't been to Lindenhurst.
But that's why I said if you know, you know, because like
Yeah.
you know about the town kids and like the crazy monster and the juggalos and
Yes,
the
yeah.
crackheads and also the dope music roots and all the up and coming shit that's happening right now from like hometown Lindenhurst people that are all like
Yeah.
kind of like building businesses in the town that are making it even cooler than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So like the good and the bad, if you know, you know. That's
Yeah.
the
If you
best
know,
way
you
to
know,
say
is
it.
a good is a good thing to say about that.
All right. So before we're out, just let everyone know where they can find your stuff online. Any info you want to drop as far as the upcoming release and upcoming shows.
Well, the LP's coming out.
Yeah, the LP is coming out relatively soon. So be on the lookout for that. Or maybe some stuff's already out by the time
Yeah.
this comes out. So that's awesome.
Maybe some Lindenhurst stuff is happening too. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say.
Some Lindenhurst things that we got planned, which is pretty cool for
Yeah.
the record rollout. So
Yeah.
if you're local to Lindenhurst and you're listening to this because you're from Lindenhurst, then definitely be on the lookout for like some stuff that we're gonna be doing.
Yep.
And
Most of the stuff we're working on as far as this LP, we're trying to, you know, do some Lindenhurst stuff.
yeah, hell yeah. And yeah, new music will be out super soon.
Most of our stuff is through Days for the LP.
Yeah.
We kind of communicate to whoever and like notify people from what we're doing on Instagram mostly. But yeah,
Yeah, you can keep up with us on Instagram. Probably
Instagram's
is
the best app. Yeah.
And then if you want to listen Spotify is probably the best place, but
Mhm.
if you're an Apple Music person or anything like that, we're on everything. So you can find us pretty easy.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Cool.
Appreciate you having us. Lindenhurst to Lindenhurst.
Yeah, hope to see you around.
My father always told me I had a rebellious streak. He just observed the thing in himself that he saw in me. When his dad threw war pigs in the fire, a chain of events began to transpire. Until the day he made the torch ignite, when he handed me a guitar and a mic. When the snow gathers the highways, or the dark is passing up above, you can still find me here, screaming away every scene.
Long live the bench.